Hey guys, it's Cyze. This time, we're looking at the Priest class tree and the Shadow Spec tree's choice nodes. These choice nodes are extremely impactful and arguably change how you play the class the most going into Dragonflight content. We'll be looking at the class tree first. I'm going over what situations you might choose these talents in, what I would pick, and where I would pick it. So we'll jump into the class tree in just a second. First off, we're going to be looking at Protective Light. Cast and Flash Heal reduces all damage you take by 10% for 10 seconds. Extremely nice little personal in PvE and PvE content. You no longer get taken out of shadow form when you're casting holy spells, so you don't miss out on much by taking it. It's quite nice in the form of, if you know during progress that there's a hard hitting ability and you're not sure if you're going to have dispersion up for it, if Power Word Shield isn't going to be used, it's nice to have that extra 10% DR on any form of damage that you take, as it's flat out damage, it's not just magical or physical. I think I'll personally be taking it for progress, but we'll have to wait and see. Versus Darkness and Light. Each time Shadow Word Pain deals damage, the healing of your next flash heal is increased by 1% up to 50%. This is a nice little lay on hand style of ability, where you can pull your personal healing and let it all go with a big heal either on yourself or somebody else. Next up is Sheer Terror, which increases the amount of damage required to break Psychic Scream by 75%. This was a Torghast power in Shadowlands. It's very niche. There's not many situations where you use Psychic Scream anyway, maybe in Mythic Plus if you want to interrupt a group of ads. But even then, in most scenarios, if you're Psychic Screaming, it's to interrupt, it's not to make them run away, because then they'll path into other packs, and you might end up wiping because of it. But Void Tendrils, on the other hand, is an AoE route for 20 seconds, or from when the Tendril is killed. This has so many more uses in PvE content. It's more likely that you can use this to kite mobs away, or get away from a pack safely when leveling if you're taking a bit too much damage. I'd rather take this than Sheer Terror, just because it gives you an extra panic button. It gives you time to get away from the pack, heal yourself up, redot them up and get back into it. Next is Mind Control versus Dominate Mind. The main difference between these two talents is that with Dominate Mind, the second one, you actually get to control your own character still. You still essentially get access to a pet that you can still control in any form of PvP, PvE content. It means that it will be quite useful. So when leveling, in the past for Shadowlands for example, I've used this spell and it's allowed me to take a quest mob that has special abilities to help me get through the quest easier. But if you think back to Blackrock Foundry and you think of Blast Furnace, during progress you needed at least 2 priests to mind control the engineers to get through the phase properly. Imagine if you were able to do that and still get to keep the priest damage or healing. You're not going to be missing out on anything by taking this, as you'll still be able to control your own character. Again, very niche, but very useful when you can use it properly. Next, we're going to be looking at Spell Warden, reduces all magical damage taken by 3%. It's a bit niche in the form that it's only magic damage. There are other raid buffs that will do this as well. 3% magic damage reduction isn't the end of the world if you're not a tank, as you know, you have quite a lot of personals as priest anyway. Blessed Recovery, on the other hand, it doesn't really have a place in PvE content. After being struck by a melee or range critical hit, heal 20% of the damage taken over 6 seconds. When in PvE content do you actually get meleeed or hit, aggro isn't an issue. It makes it kind of useless in my opinion. It might have some place in PvP content, so keep an eye on it if you are a PvP player. But further down the line we have Angel's Mercy. Damage you take reduces the cooldown on Desperate Prayer based on the damage taken. These talents are passive, they're nice to have, but very rarely do they scale well. Not many CDR talents scale well because what actually constitutes as reasonable damage to reduce it? I feel like I'll be taking this slot to fill a talent slot, and it's nice to have the passive CDR, but I would like Bind and Heal more for raid utility, especially now that you can heal in shadow form. You won't be missing out on much, and depending on how many priests you have and how likely your raiders are to use this, it might mean that you can comfortably drop a healer as long as you've got the priest to pick that up as well. So, Divine Star versus Halo. I'm really happy to see these talents back in the form of a Shadow Priest. It was really fun back in Mr. Pandaria to have them. Divine Star is almost instantly better in stacked raid encounters and Mythic Plus. It does do reduced healing beyond 6 targets, so up to 6 targets it'll do the maximum amount of healing and then it'll dip down. Halo can't really be taken in Mythic Plus. Blizzard have said that they fixed it, but after testing it, Halo is still pulling targets not in combat. Both of these I'm really happy to see back, but personally in raids I'll be taking Halo, as it is single target. You know, you're in a room, you're not going to be pulling trash, and they've reduced the minimum maximum range, increased or reduced damage. So in the past, if you stood at max range and you used it and it hit the boss, it'd do more damage. So now it's quite an easy ability to manage. You don't have to think about that. But moving on from this, we'll go on to the Shadow Spec tree and look at the choice nodes over there as well. So first off, looking at Intangibility. Dispersion heals you for an additional 25% of max health over its duration with a reduced cooldown, as well as movement speed. It's the same talent that we saw in Shadowlands and previous expansions. It's a really nice personal cooldown reduction and a little heal where you'll probably need it anyway when you're using the personal. And as well, the movement speed saved me so many times on progress in Shadowlands, such as Sylvanas on the bridges. It's really nice to have that 50% movement speed, the fact that you're immune to impairing effects. It's really good for progress in my eyes. I'll be taking it. Versus Mental Fortitude. Vampiric Touch and Devour and Plague healing, when at max health, goes into a shield, but it can't exceed 20k absorption. Makes it not as worth taking over an entire fight, as a 20k shield will be applied by other healers anyway, such as a Disc Priest Power Word shield, and I'd rather have the movement speed from Intangibility. So, moving on. Misery. Base talent that many Shadow Priests have used anyway. It applies Shadow Word Pain to Vampiric Touch, saving you a whole GCD, and it'll save you multiple GCDs over the course of an encounter. So on a boss fight where there's multiple targets, normally, if let's say there's 3 targets like now, you would be using 6 GCDs and it cuts it down in half to 3. Really nice ability. People are used to playing it, and it's a staple of the Shadow Priest trio now. Dark Void's a bit of a weird one. It's almost never scaled better than Misery or Searing Nightmare on Shadowlands, and we didn't really use it apart from maybe the start of Shadowlands when it was doing decent AoE damage and the fact that it applied up to 15 targets. Might be worth taking on pulls that have more than 10 targets that die very quickly for the instant damage and the Shadow Word Pain, but we'll have to wait and see what the scaling's like. So looking at Last Word versus Cypher Kara. Last Word reduces the cooldown on silence by 15 seconds. It's a normal talent that might be worth taking in raids if there are kicks required. Otherwise, you'll probably end up taking Psychic Horror. A lot of the raid encounters have adds on that can be stunned and CC'd, and in most situations, a short stun is better than a CDR on a silence, just because Shadow Priest kick is so long already, there's other people that can do it better. And it's nice in the fact that a stun doesn't DR the same as a silence. So you can stun a mob over and over, and you can silence them over and over, but it's nice to be able to have the option to break the DR and actually go from a silence into a stun as well. It also means if you are taking silence, you have access to a long silence and a more shorter stun as well that can work on any target. So coming out of that, Dark Ascension. Dark Ascension increases your non-damage over time damage by 25% for 25 seconds. It's most likely the talent you're going to take. It doesn't feel nice to press, considering it's on such a short cooldown and it's in your rotation. It just feels It's a lot of damage, and it's nice in the fact that it gives you a big damage increase, but it just doesn't feel nice to press. That's still an issue that Blizzard has to fix, and the fact that it's on the same row as Void Eruption. The Void Eruption's the same iteration as previous, It deals a little bit of AoE damage when you cast it, gives you access to Void Bolt, which increases the duration of the dots on the target at the time, as well as a bit of cleave in there as well. So if you're Void Bolting into a pack and you've got dots up on multiple targets in the pack, it'll be not refreshing, but it increases the duration of those debuffs on all of those targets at once. Gives you access to Void Form for the duration, in which each 25 insanity spent during that Void Form will increase the duration by 1 second. You very rarely will see this used properly, as you don't get to extend Void Eruption that much because you are still GCD locked on how much insanity you can spend in the form of Devouring Plague. So you'll probably take Dark Ascension for most of Dragonflight content, but Void Eruption might come out on top in big AoE situations where you've got your dots up and you can extend them for a longer period of time. Auspicious Spirits, it's a normal. It's 15% increased damage. It generates 1 insanity every time they do damage. Providing you've got multiple targets with dots on, this is always going to be quite strong. You get the extra insanity, so you can go into a Devouring Plague funnel on a single target or a priority target. So providing there are enough targets and you have a good amount of dots out, you can gain significant insanity from this, and you don't really have to think about it too much. That versus Tormented Spirits, your Shadow Wave Pain damages a 5% chance to create shadowy apparitions with increased chances on critical strikes. You'll probably take this providing you're playing Harness Shadows in the Puppet Master builds, as it increases the chance of a shadowy apparition to crit. So when your abilities are critting, you're going to get more use out of Tormented Spirits than you would from Auspicious Spirits. But keep an eye on it, depending on tuning, we'll have to wait and see. Death Speaker. Shadow Wave Pain damage can reset the cooldown of Shadow Wave Death and enable 150% damage regardless of the target's health. Normally, Shadow Wave Death only does 150% on an execute, but this allows you to have it in your rotation fluidly. It's a nice little extra damage in execute. You might take this the more targets you have in a fight, as the more Shadow Wave Pains you have out, the higher chance of a reset. That versus Mindflay Insanity. I've found that Mindflay Insanity is better when you can plant your feet, when you're able to get the full cast off, and you enable it by using Devouring Plague. It can be really good, providing you can stand still, and you can ensure you can stand still for the full cast. If you have to cut it short, it doesn't bank the use. It'll go back to a normal Mindflay until you Devouring Plague again. So if you have to move a lot, it might not be worth taking because you're not going to get the full use out of it. In the bottom right, we have Damnation. Applies dots to a target on a 30-second cooldown. It's quite lackluster in all forms of content, whether it be PvE, PvP. In comparison to Void Torrent, it doesn't feel strong. Sure, it saves you GCDs on applying debuffs, but with the damage the Void Torrent's putting out, it's almost a no-brainer for me. The single target prior damage that it gives, as well as generating insanity, makes Void Torrent on a completely other level. It's extremely good. The damage is scaled really high at the moment, and again, 30-second cooldown, same as Damnation, and you're gaining insanity from using it. It fits into the rotation quite well, and it doesn't feel clunky, providing you're not using Void Eruption as well. So it's an ability that you might want to pair with Dark Ascension. Make sure that they're rolling at the same time, so you get that 25% increased damage on it, and it'll do a decent amount of damage. So I do hope you made it the whole way through the video, or if you looked at specific nodes that you weren't sure about in the past, I hope it gave you a little more insight on what to pick and where you might pick them in different kinds of content. I have tested these thoroughly on the beta, and it's what I think will be the most likely in these scenarios going forward. If you like this kind of video, please comment, like and subscribe. I'll put more of them out for different classes. I'll be looking at Warlock and Monks specifically, and it'll be nice for me to get these in the run up to Dragonflight, because I understand a lot of the choice nodes can still be confusing for a lot of the player base. But yeah, please make sure to visit my Twitch channel in the description and give it a follow so you can see when I go live. I stream most days for at least a few hours, varying content from PvE raids to Mythic Plus on both the beta and live. But with that, take care guys, and thank you for watching.